Hello everybody, my name is Gregor Wolbring. I'm at the University of Calgary. My talk today is about ability privilege results of an exploratory survey. What does that mean for the aging discourse? Before I start, let me first thank all my amazing students. I hope you visit their website. When you type in Wolbring, you will find them, otherwise also under my name. It's crds.org/research/faculty/Gregor_Wolbring.shtml. Eco-Ability is a conference that seeks to foster a critical ability expectation discourse on identity, difference, and inequality across the spheres of humans, animals, and nature. I present here the results of an exploratory study on the views of students on various forms of ability privilege. I highlight some of the answers and what they might mean for the discourse around aging and ageism. The starting point is ableism. The field of disability studies and disabled people activists were the first to look at cultural dynamics and the cultural impact of ability preferences, coining the term ableism as a cultural concept in the process. The term ableism was, in essence, coined to question and highlight the expectations towards certain body abilities and the prejudice and discrimination persons experience whose body structure and ability function were labeled as impaired. Now I want to add something about language here. If one hears the term disability or disabled person or person with disabilities, often two different aspects, body image and social reality, are covered by the term disability. If one would talk about the body in ability studies language, one could use the term ability diverse, neutral language, or ability deficient biased term. If one talks about the social disablement, the negative social reality, the social discrimination, especially socially disadvantaged groups and people face, in ability studies language, one could say ability expectation for people or people impacted by ability expectation. This range would apply far beyond the people we traditionally label as disabled impaired. Indeed, people experiencing many isms such as sexism, racism, ageism could be seen as ability expectation oppressed. Ability expectation oppression does not play itself out only between individuals, but can also play itself out between countries such as global north and global south, and within countries between whole class of people like the poor and the rich, or other social structures like humans and animals and humans and nature. Now let me talk a little bit about ability privilege. Ability privilege describes the advantages enjoyed by those who exhibit certain abilities and the unwillingness of these individuals to relinquish the advantage linked to the abilities, especially with the reason that these are earned or birth-given natural abilities. To link it back to disabled people, for example, as the originator of the term ableism, the concept of ableism was developed to question the ability privilege, for example, the ability to work, to gain education, to be part of society, to have an identity, to be a citizen, that come with a species-typical body, although they did not use the term ability privilege. This ableism conceptualized within the meaning of ability privilege suggests that people with expected normative body abilities are not willing to give up their ability privilege. The cultural phenomenon of ability privilege, however, can be employed beyond the social group of disabled people and their encounter with the ability normative body. Ability privilege can play themselves out between traditionally defined social groups, race, gender, class, where at the same time social groups are also formed based on ability privileges, whereby the social group is defined by whether its members have or don't have a given ability. Ability privilege also influences how one relates to nature and to animals and shapes one's identity. Which ability privilege is classified as earned or unearned constantly changes and is not only culturally constructed, but exhibition and acceptance or rejection of different ability privileges also are one aspect that shapes culture. These ability expectations lead to the exhibition of various forms of ability privilege in various forms of disablement. Now, as to the method, in essence, I present here results of an ethics-approved online survey which had a variety of questions, of which I only cover a few, and students were given that online survey. Now, as to the results, to demographics, 91.94% of the students, 57 of them, were female. The majority was between 18 and 30 years of age, 87.1%, 54, and all students were undergraduates. Now, when asked whether they believed a privilege existed, I might ask them a couple of different privileges. The following were found. As to male privilege, 25 of the 67 felt this exists. For walking as a privilege, 26 of the 67. Competition as a privilege, only 8 saw this as a privilege of 67. Humans privileged over nature, 14 of 67. Humans over animals, 22 of 67. And race, where asked for white privilege, 19 of 67. The findings suggest that the majority of the students do not believe a privilege exists for a given group they were asked about. Then I asked the students all kind of other questions. Right? For example, one is, in today's society, it is important that one not be perceived as prejudiced in any manner. And then you have to agree, 5 is strong agree, and 1 is strongly disagree. And the average is 4.0, which means we are between agree and strongly agree. Privilege is often about prejudice and the power to set the stage according to one's desire. So it's kind of interesting that they felt all the privileges were not there. So they might not even see themselves as being prejudiced because they don't see the privilege of certain things like male walking or competition as a privilege. So that would be something further research has to untangle. Another question was whether participants intend to work on dismantling the privilege. And again, strongly agree 5, disagree 1. And then I have here, I intend to work at dismantling the privilege of being competitive. And the average rating is 2.4. So it's really between disagree to unsure, which is a 3. But in the end, when you look at it, strongly agree or agree has 0. So most people really answered as unsure. And then if you ask the same question for the privilege of humans over animal, it's 2.64 is the average rating. Humans over Earth, 2.42. And then it's like my walking privilege is 3.0 and white privilege 2.91. The finding indicates a low desire to get actively involved in the political process. In both type of questions, competitiveness was the one most accepted as a privilege and the least one wants to get involved in to change. I mean, this finding does not come as a surprise, I think, as competitiveness is very much part of the social fabric of many countries, and indeed is seen as an essential indicator of process for many. Students were also asked whether a given privilege should be eliminated, and here I will try to apply this to the aging process, as this is seems to be part of the call for papers. In the CFP, it states that this conference hoped to broaden the 2 areas of aging and disability. My survey did not ask whether students think the young are privileged over the elderly or the middle-aged ones over the young. Indeed, this is one project underway that is not concluded yet. In order to contribute to the aging and disability discourse, I will interpret some of the reasons given why students felt that a given privilege should not be eliminated with aging in mind. What were some of the reasons for not wanting to interfere? What do the arguments tell us? What does the reasoning mean for people aging? Worldwide, the number of older people will exceed the number of young people in 2050. And trend is already a reality in many countries. The development is seen to impact intergenerational and intergenerational equity and solidarity that are the foundation of society. Economic growth, savings, investment and consumption, labor market, pensions, taxation and intergenerational transfer, health and healthcare, family composition and living arrangements, housing and migration, and voting pattern and representation. This comes from United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs Population Division World Population on Age in 1950 to 2050 report, which I can give you guys the URL when you need this. Aging well is increasingly discussed as a dynamic process involving use of resources, engagement with context, and definition of self. Various documents suggest actions that have to be taken in order to age well. Ageism is discussed extensively as a threat to aging well. People not fitting the species disability norm also get increasingly older, and add to the dynamics of aging well processes, because compared to people that fit the species' typical ability norm, they have different needs as they age. Age-related physical change, such as sensory and mobility loss, are more likely to occur, as well as to occur at earlier ages and with greater intensity. Now let's look at some of the arguments people used to not interfere with the privilege. Like, as to the privilege of walking, one stated, no, this advantage should not be eliminated. It only hurts people who can walk. Technology has to improve for individuals who aren't able to walk. This kind of reasoning fits with the widespread discourse of techno-solution to deal with social problems. Indeed, we have proposals to make animals sentient as a means to fight speciesism. Assistive technologies are a main discourse around body ability expectation, diverse people. This normally as impaired defined people. People think of genetically altering their genes to change their skin color. We change the eye shape of people to fit the culture they are in. However, this narrative assumes that one can afford the technologies as individuals and as countries, and it has the danger of freeing people of getting involved in taking on the social dynamic that leads to the problem in the first place. As to aging, it puts the onus on the elderly to find ways to preserve and improve their abilities through scientific and technological means. Interestingly, the movement of extreme longevity uses a scientific approach to delay aging, labeling aging as a disease in the process. Another of the students stated, no, it should not be eliminated. It takes away something that is important to a human, even if we don't recognize it. So it's not fair for people who cannot walk. It shouldn't be something taken away. This argument used within the framework of aging could mean that being able is important to humans, so if one loses abilities, it's not fair to aging people, but the privilege of ability should persist. This kind of argument is of particular consequence if it's coupled with a negative rights framework, where one claims that one should not be stopped from obtaining something, but that one has no obligation to ensure that others can obtain the same. The negative rights framework plays into the hand of maintaining privilege and not doing anything. Indeed, the language of reasonable accommodation and similar terms could be seen as indicators for not wanting to deal with privilege on a systemic level. Who has the power to define reasonable? Is it reasonable to ask people to change their habits, their ways, how they define themselves? Reasonable is much more than whether something is monetarily seen as unreasonable, although this is the main use of the term in the moment. As to the issue of competitiveness, some of the arguments for not intervening were, no, competition is a source of motivation and drive for people to learn and under their limit and then improve themselves. As long as the competition is fair, there's nothing wrong with outcompeting people. No, because advantage is earned and not bestowed. To accept competitiveness without much thought is one source of ageism. A common manifestation of ageism is negative treatment of the elderly because they no longer have the abilities of their youth. Many elderly adhere to youtheism, the desire and expectation to have abilities of youth, by endeavoring to retain the abilities of their youth in order to escape ageist treatment. We increasingly see elderly with age-related deteriorations asking for restoration of abilities of their youth. Research resources directed at understanding and achieving extreme longevity pay further tribute to youthist beliefs. It is doubtful that the main client of youtheism-linked treatments will be aging people with disabilities. More likely, it will be people who have begun to experience ability variations due to aging. If being competitive is a source of motivation, what if one cannot compete? Does that one lead to not feeling worth living anymore? If the argument that something is an earned advantage is a valid argument, what will the consequence be? Interestingly, there is a narrative that the elderly deserve a break, that they earned a break because of what they did already. But what about the ones who are seen of not having done enough to have it earned? Now, as to human advantage over animals, some of the reasons for not interfering was, no, this is part of life. No, I don't think so. Such advantages are good for us, as it gives us edge and ability to hunt animals and get food around many places that might not be as accessible for export, such as some places in Africa. This advantage should not be eliminated because it has been the command from the beginning and it will be at the end. No, it is the planned order of things and it is not meant to be eliminated, nor will it ever be eliminated. No, I don't believe this should be eliminated, as animals aren't as advanced as humans are and don't need to advance in their environment. No, I believe humans are different abilities than animals for a reason. If such arguments were valid, that would leave people aging in a very difficult position. Aging could be seen as part of a planned order, and that's the reason for the elderly to have less abilities, and it is a command from the beginning and will be to the end, and such ability differences are good for use, and it's part of life. As to the arguments against eliminating the advantage we have around nature somewhere, I don't think it's possible to eliminate this advantage. We are always going to need things from nature, so we are going to have to manipulate it and use it to our advantage and needs. Again, no, it's according to plan and will not change unless the original plan changes, no matter how hard man may try. No, because there's nobody to compete with or that we are affecting. You can't eliminate the advantage. It's the way of the Earth is designed, and you can't change that. No, this is the balance of the world. Now, besides that these arguments would only allow for an anthropocentric view of the world, the question is, what else can be seen as the order of things? The inferiority of women versus men, as believed by many? How will this line of reasoning deal with the elderly and aging? To conclude, the question is, who has the ability power? Meaning, what abilities give one the power over others, and who has the power to decide which abilities count? Will the elderly ever have the ability power? If yes, all elderly or just the able elderly? The increase in the people living longer impacts intergenerational equity and solidarity that are the foundation of society, as I stated before. How do the arguments used above denounce solidarity between humans? How are the arguments used to justify non-interference with certain ability privileges as outlined mean for this solidarity? What are the boundaries of solidarity? Are there boundaries? Let me finish with a conversation of a computer game. Within the conversation as part of the computer game Deus Ex Invisible War might lay the way forward as how to deal with ability expectation and ableism. Conversation between Alex D. and Paul Denton. If you want to even out the social order, you have to change the nature of power itself, right? And what creates power? Wealth, physical strength, legislation, maybe, but none of these is the root principle of power. I'm listening. Ability is the ideal that drives the modern state. It's a synonym for one's wealth, one's social reason, one's selection in the biblical sense. And it's the ideal that needs to be changed if people are to begin living as equals. Alex D. And you think you can equalize humanity with biomodification? Paul Denton. The commodification of ability, tuition of course, but increasing in genetic treatment, cybernetic protocols, now biomods has had the side effect of creating a self-perpetuating aristocracy in all advanced societies. When an ability becomes a public resource, what will distinguish people will be what they do with it. Intention, dedication, integrity. The quality we would choose as the bedrock of the social order. Now, we really have to think about which ability expectation we want and which are valid, and we have to bring up a narrative of ability expectation, a counter-narrative. For example, if competitiveness is so prevalent and it's problematic, is maybe the ability expectation of equity, right, a better one? So ability expectation is not necessarily a negative one, it's just a reality, but we can build positive narratives around it that the ability expectation we think we need, and make a case why they are needed. The same as people make a case why they think competitiveness is needed as an ability expectation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.